And we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have so many of you from North Carolina here joining us today from many roles across North Carolina. I am Nancy Mangum, and I am the Associate Director of Professional Learning at the Friday Institute. I know it's great to many of you I know from our work at the Institute, and many of you have joined these webinars with us over the past several weeks. We are so pleased to bring you these webinars in partnership with the Department of Public Instruction. We are grateful that they have sponsored the Friday Institute and our team to put these on for you. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Darren Hudgens. Darren is a wonderful friend and consultant of the Friday Institute and is joining us from Portland, Oregon. And Darren has an exciting session today for us entitled, Is the Juice Worth the Squeeze? So let's get started. I'm turning it over to Darren. Thanks, Darren, for joining us.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. All right, well, I appreciate you being here. Thank you. It's very exciting. I'm going to dive right in. This particular presentation I've done a couple of times and I've always tweaked it, and so it's really nice to have you folks here to kind of see what I'm hoping is a plea to embed more social emotional learning and media literacy into your instruction with your students, rather than having it as kind of an extra thing. So it's really exciting to have this opportunity. A little bit of background on me. I have been a teacher. I was a teacher for 11 years, the secondary level. I have, after those 11 years, I worked for a nonprofit that was helping educators work with instructional technology, both running events. I see myself as kind of a professional curator of both people and strategies and tools. And so I've tried the best I can to share those resources with others. And then finally, I'm hoping in this venture, which is what you're seeing here, I have a company called Think, Do, Thrive, named after what I try to do in every workshop, talk like this, whatever it is that I do. I try to make sure that I push you to think, which I'm hoping to do today, that I get you to do some stuff, because I know that's important to learning, play, and doing. Is a big piece of that. And then in the end, I hope you and your students thrive. This is how you can get a hold of me in a bunch of different ways. I will also be showing this slide at the end, should you, like I said, want to contact me or have any questions. So thanks a lot for being here. I want to start with this particular statement. It isn't attributed to someone. You can find it, kind of all over the internet, but I'm going to give you a second to read this. We spend a lot of time in schools focusing on curriculum and classroom management and all those kinds of things. And I think this just speaks well to, we can make these kids really, really smart. But if they can't manage the other side, it's kind of like that art and science of teaching. If we can't manage our emotions or resolutions or deal with stress, then being really, really smart, sometimes that's a struggle. So along that line is I'm expecting or looking at us as a bunch of adults having a discussion today, going through this particular topic. And there will be a couple things in here, not a lot, but a couple things in here that might be inappropriate for some older kid or younger kids, excuse me. I'm hoping that we can go through it with that in mind, and that it's a learning thing for adults. And then you can make the determination of what you think is appropriate, depending on what you're doing. There's nothing that I have in this presentation that I haven't done with kids. Of course, sometimes you have to ask permission and make sure it fits the dynamic. So I just want to lay that out there. So the first thing in that quote was really talking about managing emotions. I know it's a big point for you, how we've seen a big rise in that. And the particular thing that we see the most there's seems to be a real jump with both qualitatively and quantitatively in students struggling with both mental, or not both, but all three mental, behavioral, and developmental things. And it's continuing to kind of resonate as we focus strictly on testing. It's important. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to come across as negative to math and science, but there's more to the whole child than just those things. And so I want to try to bring those up. And a lot of times people focus on the primary part of things with students, but you're also seeing, and I think both in middle school and high school, that this has also been a struggle with managing those emotions. This is not just subject to the United States. Here's one global perspective. Australia, who has some similarities in our culture, have also been struggling with anxiety and depression. A lot of people think this is a common thing with some of the stressors of today. And I know many of you are at home during this pandemic and having some, struggles with that as well. The second piece is conflict resolution that was discussed in that quote. And as you can see, this also has some depression and anxiety statistics in there. But for the case of this particular one, also focusing on these different behavioral disorders, which I know is tough to teach under. The second piece of that conflict resolution is this whole despair and empowerment curve, which, some people say, well, this is from the 1990s, and in this rapid information age, sometimes we think that the stuff from the past isn't good, but I think we're finding a lot of folks having a difficult time when something strikes them and they get in a state of, I can't get out of this. I'm in that despair mode. And so helping kids, helping adults feel empowered is an important strategy that they'll use the remainder of their life. And I think all those things on the right, even in some cases, again, back to our situation, as adults, we're dealing with the perceptions of the situation, the information that we're dealing with, and we're looking for ways to empower, which is why hopefully many of you are doing these webinars and being a part of what we're doing today. And then the last piece of that quote was really about handling stress. Important piece, as you know, that gets ramped up the older that you get. But many of our children are living in high stress situations. And we are in a time like never before when it comes to the ability to get information. It's pushed at you constantly. Even if you try to hide, you're still getting, we have just lots more information today and speed to get that information than ever before. And so it is something that is both the new style of what we are today, dealing with the old reptilian brain, which is part of the amygdala. And the amygdala is that fight or flight response. Many of you, I think, I'm hoping, have had some work with the brain. And what ends up happening is when you're constantly getting this influx of that sensory and intellectual information, it puts your brain into crisis mode. What do I do? How do I handle it? And it's the outcome in lots of situations, if we're not working on ways to deal with it, is creating more and more anxiety. And all three of those things, managing the stress, conflict resolution, and then finally this anxiety piece, we're hoping that if we can address those things, you will have a more positive school climate. And so we're looking at climate as a whole, a bigger picture, but also if you look at many of these things in this positive learning environment in the middle, you want engagement in your kids, you want them to feel safe, and then you want to have an environment that gives them agency and the ability to know where they're going, challenge them, all those types of things. When those are entered in, when those kind of three areas are, somebody has their mic on, if you don't mind muting that, I appreciate it. But what ends up happening is you create that better environment. It's, similar to what we've learned with Maslow. Your brain relaxes and gives it a much easier way to learn. So with that in mind, I'm going to have you do something here. You will need to see your screen, and you will need to have be able to listen, but I'd love to have you stand up right now. I'm going to give you a second to do that. All right, so then as you're standing up, you can use your left hand or you can use your right hand. It doesn't matter, but I'd like you to mimic this picture with your fingers. So again, you can do it with either side. It doesn't matter, right hand or left hand, whatever feels most comfortable. Hopefully you have that figured out. So the next thing that I'm going to have you do is follow along with this particular slide. So you're going to take your fingers and you're going to place your thumb on one side of your nose. And I'd like to have you inhale and exhale out of the nose that you are not pinching. Have very, very deep breaths all the way, if you can, all the way up, feeling like it's to the top of your head. And then on your exhale, all the way down to the middle of your stomach. And I'd like to see you go back and forth, real deep breaths, alternating breathing through the nostril that is not plugged. Big breaths. All right, you can now be seated, and I am going to give you a next set of instructions. Hopefully that clears your mind a little bit from all the work you've been doing today. And what I would like you to do now, you can do this on your computer in a browser, or you can do this, it's very easy to do on your phone, is to either type in menti.com and it will pop up a screen you can see there on the slide, or enter in, and then enter in that code 791001. Or if you have a smart device, smartphone with a camera, you should be able, or a QR code reader, you should be able to put it over that QR code, and that also will take you to the menti.com page. So I'm going to give you a second to do that, and I'm going to check to see if some of you folks are able to get in there. And it has a question, and that particular question is, I'm going to leave that up there. Sorry about that. That particular question is what I'd love for you to do, and some of you are already doing an excellent job of this, is just tell me what's on your mind today. You are not, these will not put your name in there. These will be anonymous. I would really encourage you to just feel open to express whatever's on your mind. What are you thinking about? Again, nobody's going to know. Even I on the back end, with the Mentimeter that you're putting in, it does not give me any of your information. So I'd like to encourage you to speak your mind on what's going on upstairs. Lots of stress going on. Looks like some sickness. People worried about the future. Employment. bills, safety, supporting other teachers, monitoring progress, thinking about family, staying safe. So I really appreciate you being honest. I kind of was listing off some of these things. As I said here, the pulp is rising to the top, playing on a little bit of the presentation, but really looking at some themes. You have lots of similarities, lots of stuff that you're wondering. And this is actually both those exercises. The breathing exercise is a great way to calm your brain down, work through some of that. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But the second exercise is a great opportunity for kids. Sometimes they feel back to that despair thing in that curve. They feel like they're the only ones. They feel like, that they're going through these things alone. And when you can bring about exercises that allow you and your students to express that, no, we have a lot of the same worries and the same concerns. It actually draws down some of those social emotional stressors. And so we'll debrief that a little bit coming up, but it's wanted to put you through a little bit of an exercise to say, you're not alone in this. And what it does is it really leads to, well, why should we teach SEL? Here, for those of you, like I tried to just show you some of that, and I tried to make the case for that earlier in this presentation. But for some of you that need research to back it up, here are some things that I can give you. I just tried to help a little bit with recognizing and managing emotions, both through a breathing technique and also looking at others and what they're struggling with. The other big piece to this is oftentimes students in urban and rural areas who are under-resourced, who have other things going on other than just school that they struggle with. Not that all kids don't, but sometimes we really see deficits in those particular groups. They had these added stressors because of the outside of school. These particular, adding in social emotional learning and focusing on those competencies really helps these students manage the emotions and push through in some of their more difficult situations. You can also see here folks that actually have put SEL things into practice, and it didn't matter based on their grade level. It didn't matter where they lived, and it doesn't matter what kind of school situation they have. All those that practiced SEL competencies increased in those 5 areas, which you can see there in the bullets, which I think is really important and speaks to that quote that we had earlier in this presentation. And then last but not least, that's some of the written research. Some of you need to see, well, it's really important for me and my kids' test scores or grades and those types of things. This is a pretty extensive study. It was done with lots of different students, and they found that the students that had been taught SEL competencies and worked through it not only had these better attitudes and behaviors, but you can see there in school performance, they actually had higher test scores by 14%, and their grades actually improved by 11%, which I know is certainly part of all of your roles and jobs. So last but not least, to me, like the third thing, which is really how can you benefit as an educator? And an educator, I mean, not just the classroom teacher, but also an administrator is, it overall just lowers your anxiety and depression in kids. And I would, in this case, say it would help you as an educator, they found. It also increases your ability to interact with them because there's the human side of things, not just the academic side. And it leads to you feeling like you're actually making a difference. I don't think any of you got in this with the concept that you were going to be ultra rich or something like that. You're doing this because you want to help your society, you're a social servant, all those types of things. And so this is an added benefit for that. So my question to you is then, or not question, excuse me, let me back up. I jumped the gun a little bit, I apologize. What I wanted to tell you is like, okay, so I put you through that particular exercise. Here's one of the ways you can do it. You may have seen this in the slide, but the one exercise we did with alternative breathing, here are different things that that does. And so this is the strategy you can teach kids when they get overhyped or their brain's racing, things like that. Activities like alternative breathing can help them relax and calm down and bring that amygdala back to some balance. So that's certainly a strategy you can use. There are many other deep breathing strategies that you can use. I have linked to those in this presentation. I don't think we said this at the beginning, but you are going to get access to these slides at the end. And you will be able to go in and click on these and look through some of these resources. The first two are really focused on deep breathing, but number 3 there, learning to cope with emotional stress, also has a bunch of other really excellent strategies that you can use as well. So hopefully that will help, but with the time of this presentation, I'm going to continue to move on, but you should know you will have access. The thing that I did with the Mentimeter, asking you about what you think, is a modified version online. I actually like to do this strategy physically with students and staff. And it's based on a thing called a snowball toss. And what I'm not going to play this video, but again, you'll have access. It's a very nice short video of how they have used this to get kids to be able to express what's going on. And what you do is you physically take a piece of paper, you have them write down what's going on, what are they thinking about. You actually have them crunch up that ball of paper, and then you allow the kids to have a snowball fight. And so they're throwing these snowballs at each other, which again creates some activity, some movement, some fun. And then you stop the snowball fight and everybody finds a ball and picks it up. And then you go around the room having them read the statements. It obviously is not their statement. And so they are getting to read somebody else's, which gets them to see inside the brain of another student. It also lets them hear outwardly what their statements are. And, you know, I think it helps all kids, but it's very effective with introverts. Because typically they do not want to express their feelings, oftentimes more comfortable sharing someone else's. And so it's an excellent strategy. This is a great video that shows you, real quickly how to use that strategy. And there's other ways to do it, but I wanted to make sure that I drew that out for you.
Darren, it looks like, in just looking in the chat, it looks like several people are familiar or have tried it. So that's great. Great to know that it people have done that and it's worked well.
That is fantastic. That makes me smile. It made my day right here. So at least in this section, the last thing that I wanted to point you out to, and I'm hoping, being that majority of you are in the state of North Carolina, that you've also heard of this. I got to be part of a wonderful creation of a SEL course at the Friday Institute. And they have a kind of an onboarding course for if you want to get to know more about SEL. It's full of strategies, ideas. There's a collaborative piece to it. I know they have extended the course and it's going to continue for some time. I've not only put a link on the Castle framework there, you can see in the blue and those green, orange, and yellow or gold colors, but you can also link to that in the QR code. I'm very proud of what we put together, and I know there's been, I think, almost, don't hold me to this, but around 10,000 people over the couple of different iterations that have been a part of this course. So I would highly recommend you look at this for, again, strategies and ways to collaborate with others. You want to add anything to that, Nancy? Can't hear you.
Allison
Oh, there you
is
are.
saying that she is she said she really enjoyed the course, and it looks like Kathleen is working through it now and a lot of great information. And there are PLC guides with those. So if it's something that you want to do with your team, or if you're in a position to help initiate that in your school, there are those guides you can work through it with your team.
That is perfect. So along that line, and you guys are already doing it, so it shows what great students you already are. I wanted to ask you during this whole COVID situation, what have you been doing? Have you been doing anything with regards to SEL? And so what I was hoping is and this can be big or small. Have you done with your students or your parents or your staff? Do you have any suggestions of things or comments that you could make in the chat that, hey, I've tried some things, and this is what I've tried. Again, in the chat situation, we probably don't have, you can't write your dissertation, but can you write down a few things that perhaps you've been doing? And it's okay if you haven't. I'm just curious. This unprecedented situation with both asynchronous and synchronous learning has forced us to have to try some things we hadn't tried before. So it looks like somebody's tried some of it within Zoom sessions. Yoga and yard work. Pulling weeds, staying on your head. Is that the kind of how that is? I love it.
Leonie is saying using brain breaks.
Yes, that's excellent. Lessons focused on Flex Fridays.
Tammy's saying she does wellness checks, or they do wellness checks.
Perfect. Oh, this is great. So many of you scavenger hunts. We're looking for balanced students in our scavenger hunt. No, this is great. So lots of you, I didn't have to make a huge plea in SEL. You're already doing some of it. That's great. That's wonderful. Assistant call to check in with students. I found myself working a lot outside too. That's certainly getting out and being one with nature. For a lot of people, that also does some great balancing acts.
I see some of you talking about doodling or drawing.
Yes,
that's a great stress reliever for both us as well as our students.
Mm-hmm. Yes, my mother has been. She's not in education at all, but she called me and Darren, I have to tell you about this thing I did. We're social distancing, but I was doing this with my neighbor, and we were doing adult coloring. And she was all excited about it and was just finding it was so relaxing, and they could just chat from afar. And I just thought it was so cute. So, and I didn't mean to downplay. Doodling is actually high level thinking. There's all kinds of stuff out there about that. So doodle away. A lot of people think that's just kids screwing around, but in lots of cases, it's some high level thinking. So anyway, lots here. You guys are awesome already. And I think whenever I do this presentation, it ends up feeling like, hey, if we just do SEL, it's just going to fix everything. Like we'll just, it's magic. We have the statistics and all those kinds of things. And we're feeling calm, and students will get it and they will pass their tests and all that. But there's a second component to this that I want to bring out, that there's actually this outside world that even if we breathe deeply, can often impact this. And so this is when it gets a little hot and heavy. I'm going to show you a video here. And what I would ask you to do just to start, and we'll give you a chance to unpack it, is just watch, listen and watch, and try to pick up as much as you possibly can. You heard all right, Nancy?
Once upon a time, you and all your kind lived underneath bridges, had ridges for ribs that dropped off into empty chests as if your hearts were all stolen treasures. As if an excavation crew were hired to dig up and remove the part of you that let you feel. And while the world above you invented the wheel, you stayed put, knowing it would one day need to roll over top of you to get to where it's going. You had an endlessly flowing supply line of food. You began to brood over humanity and made meals of our hope, as if crushing our spirits would make your mirrors cast better reflections than the ones they gave. As if the only way you could save yourselves was to make the world ugly so no one would notice you hiding in it. You learned to knit pain into a kind of camouflage, treated hope like a mirage that you could use to lure in your next meal. You lived off of our fears if you could taste what we feel. And every night, as the moon read bedtime stories to sunlight, you took darkness as an invite to head out into the world. You curled your hands into wrecking balls. Your breath became squalls. You made rocks rumble. You made land shiver. You made boys and girls pray that someone would deliver them from you. We told them you aren't real. And then one day, the world changed. But you all stayed the same. Just migrated from living underneath bridges to living underneath information superhighways. Days and nights became meaningless. Each already deepened chest became an abyss that no one would ever find the bottom of. Concepts like love fell into your gravity. We turned ourselves into life preservers, hoping to save as many as we could. But the fathers who stood guarding closet doors and the mothers who secured the floors underneath beds all shook their heads, not knowing how to deal with you. You, who crept into our lives with tongues like knives, stabbing your words into our skin. You began uploading yourselves into our homes. You had computer screens for eyes and software for bones. You turned your hate into stones and hurled them at beauty as if you couldn't bear to see anything other than ugly, anything different. You had fingernails like flint and scraped them along decency, hoping we would be the ones to all catch fire. You all had smiles like one-way barbed wire, not meant to keep us out, meant to keep us in. Voice like a firing pin, you spoke in explosions. It isn't cute. It isn't funny. You've talked strangers into death and laughed. And as each family learns to graft skin over the wounds you gave them, you hem yourselves into the scar. You have coaxed the sober back into bars, handed out cigars at memorials, offered nooses, cliffs, and pills to those who unfortunately found you before they found help. You have praised suffering, waltzed in between tragedies, gracefully dipping misery as if we would somehow be impressed with the dexterity of your animosity. You have cheered on rape, dashed through police tape as if it were the finish line in a race of who can be awful first. Even now, you somehow see this as an invitation to turn your keyboards into catapults, wondering which one of you can be the first to hate this best. Your loathing, already dressed in riot gear, ready to incite rage, as if each message board is a stage where you recite hostility, turning freedom of speech into freedom of cruelty. We are stuck with you, the same way you are stuck with you. Your mind is glue and it keeps malice fastened there like cheap wallpaper. We were once upon a time told that none of you exist. We dismissed you as make-believe or myth. Now, armed only with resolve, we can no longer afford to tell ourselves that you aren't real. We will not let you make your dinners out of the things we feel.
So I like to let that sit a bit. There's a lot going on there. I'm going to let you unpack that To do this though, again, we would do this differently if it was face-to-face, but we're going to make it work here and it's going to be awesome. I'd love you to go to either this bit.ly, or again, you can use the practice we used earlier of using your QR code. And it's going to take you to a platform called Padlet. And you should see when you get there at the top, it'll say Troll by Shane Kozan. I'm going to give you a second to get there. Once you get there, and I will move to the next slide, which will give you some instructions, but I know some of you are going to get there quicker than others. You're going to write 2 separate responses there. And so you're not going to do them in the same thing. You would actually use the plus, and you could click right on it. You're going to add a response. Again, it doesn't have to be a dissertation. It could be, you know, a 1 sentence, couple words, whatever you see fit of how you want to respond. And then you're actually going to make a second response. So you're not going to do it under the same thing. You would do a second one. And you can see I put in a couple of examples there. You don't have to put a number 1 and number 2. I was trying to make it explicit. And I can see some of you are starting to put those in. So that's excellent. So I'm going to move from this slide. I can come back to it, but I want to give you the instructions as we go forward here. So you're going to write 2 separate reactions to the video. Some of you are just doing a fantastic job getting that in there. Just things like Tetris right now. There's so many responses in here. This is awesome. Makes me feel. Disturbing, yeah. Nightmarish. To make you, a lot of you are talking about descriptions of it. That's great. Is there any of you thinking about your students, thinking about, let's say the internet, let's say about access, let's say about nursery rhymes. There's all kinds of pieces. Time, social, emotional. So many of you are getting those responses in, and that's fantastic. After you get your 2 in there, what I would like you to do is then go and start looking at other people's reactions. What did they write? And you'll see below it says add a comment. As you read through it, if there's something that you like or phrases you agree with, let them know that in the comment section underneath their post. If you have a question to what they wrote, like I saw somebody put in here, it said cowardly. I might ask, what do you mean by cowardly, or who is cowardly? Things like that. Fear, somebody wrote. I might say I agree with that. Or be creative in that, but read through other folks' responses and add comments to their response. That's an interesting one. Made me self-examine. Sometimes stress comes out in different ways. Stress in others. I like the positivity. Good wins over evil. We've got some good positivity in here. Thank you for not trolling me in this. I appreciate it. Oh, you guys are so good. Who knows? You never know on a Thursday what's going to happen with people. Like this is great. Very dark and depressing. I was not trying to depress you on a Thursday. Although I will tell you, it is very dark and rainy here in Oregon today, which maybe not a surprise. We don't have that Carolina blue sky. Okay. Well, I mean, as you know, we could do this for days. I mean, that there are so many layers to that video. I absolutely love it. I've done it with kids as young as fourth grade. Um, I actually went into a school and did it with several classes that were actually leaving poetry, and they wanted to then talk about kind of morals, ethics, and values because many of the kids were not treating each other very well. And they were cheating on some tests and doing those. And so I used this video as a bridge because I didn't want to just say, hey, you've done poetry, and then now magically we're going to move into media literacy and social emotional learning. And this does that and many more. I was amazed. I wasn't sure how the kids would react to it. And that's kind of why I made this thing at the beginning. I spoke with the superintendent, I spoke with the principal and the teachers and said, this is what I'm going to show them. Are you okay with it? And they were fine. They were blown away about the responses that came out from these kids. It was both an SEL unit, a media literacy unit. It was a how do you treat each other unit. There were so many components to it. We could even get into the art of the actual what you saw in the pictures and all the details. So much I could talk about it for days, but we don't have that kind of time. But I wanted to give you that resource, and I wanted to definitely give you a strategy that you can do with your kids even today in another form by using Padlet and some of these discussions. One of the pieces, then the reason, I gave you a bunch of reasons why I love the video, but one of the things I wanted to draw out is, we talked about the social emotional piece earlier in the presentation. Fairy tales used to be teaching kids morals, ethics, and values. They were a way to help adults teach their kids what's right and wrong. And as was alluded to in the video, that a lot of things, like in this case, trolls lived under bridges. And it was something that was scary, and you attached to maybe monsters under the bed or in the closet, and dealing with kids' fears. One of the positives of the internet and the positives of the ability to reach each other all over the globe, for that matter, is the amount of information that's given. But with every good, obviously, there's kind of the yin and the yang, and there's some bad. And we now have people that want to do harm and treat folks poorly on the internet. But that's really a byproduct of, if we break things down, one of the ways is bullying. And we've had bullying since the beginning of time. We've been able to scale that bullying in a way that's different with the reach of the internet and our mobile devices and things like that. And I think it's important to talk with kids and work through with kids what is right and what is wrong, and where you're leading yourself to. And just because you may not feel great about yourself, bringing others down, pushing them in other ways is not the right thing to do. And this is a vehicle to do that. But it also brings up a bigger question: is they are influenced by media all the time. And whether we like it or not, and whether we don't, banning phones, getting rid of the television, all those things are, the media is everywhere, and it's not going to stop us. And so we need to spend some time working with kids. And how do you work through these things? How do you let somebody know about them being trolled, on down the line? And I could go on and on and on, but we have time. Part of this education process to making kids feel like they are empowered, that they do have agency, is helping them process good and bad decisions, processing through what is good information, what is bad information, what is fact, what is fiction. And as you look, again, in trying to give you some specifics through research, is kids are feeling pretty out of control when it comes to understanding information. We have so much, and I say kids, but adults are too. And we need to find ways to help them engage in that. This is, to me, both the necessity for the republic democracy that we live in. We're having trouble having discourse with each other because we're divided along political lines, gender lines, race lines, all those types of things. And we need to find ways to help kids discuss those things because I think it's vital to our culture. And the media certainly influences that. I want to show you an example of what these kids are learning. So I think you get an idea from that video. It's really, really important that we discuss things like that. I mean, kids think I have to live a certain way, I've got to look perfect, or you've heard of FOMO, fear of missing out. They think, well, I'm not doing all these other things. When in fact, a lot of these things are being presented to people and they're not even real. Even in perfect cases, you with them. Letting them know that you're vulnerable, letting them know things are difficult for you. They get to see an adult figure that is figuring things out, that is working through it, that is processing it. We need to be able to spend time with kids and embed this in with the curriculum. I'm not going to show this video, but it's another way of looking at media literacy in a different way, perception, anxiety, difficulty, all those kinds of things. And it's a very short video, wonderful. It's called The Present. You've won a bunch of awards, and again, you will have these slides and you can see that if you haven't. It's got a kind of a surprise ending, which is excellent. Teaches a lot of compassion and empathy for kids. So my question to you, we've got about 9 minutes, is I'd love to see in the chat, in a short amount of time, have I made the case to you, is the juice worth the squeeze? And as you can see, I've kind of twisted this a little bit. Sometimes I put, is the squeeze worth the juice? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Obviously, the juice is the byproduct. It's what you take in. It's what you do. The squeeze is the work. And I want to see what you think so far. Have I made a case for you for more SEL, teaching media literacy? What do you think?
I think absolutely yes, Darren. It's already overwhelmingly yes.
Oh. So
Trisha also mentions that social media has led children to invent negative perceptions of themselves. And so maybe that's another, I think probably taking from there, it is absolutely worth it.
Yeah, I left that part out of the presentation. I could go off about, I think media literacy and social emotional are absolutely directly tied. Our perceptions of what we have come from Hollywood, come from social media, come from even tattoos are a piece of media. When you see other people with tattoos, like that's influencing thoughts and perceptions. So absolutely, I totally agree. That being said, I don't think we should ban it all, because there's a bunch of wonderful things with social media.
That's
Uh,
right.
there's a bunch of
Chris,
the wonderful things you can do with your phone, all those types of things.
yes. Darren, Christine is saying that yes, we have students who have been isolated and who need us to show them the lightness in the world, and we can show them
Yep.
that. And I thought you would appreciate that. I know you often talk about that.
Absolutely. This is great. Yeah, social media at its worst is anti-SEL. Yeah, that's, and then again, all social media is a byproduct of our society, and so the more things we can do to foster that environment in a positive way, especially from kids, is important.
Darren,
My, go ahead.
Mary says that we need more help in teaching students with media literacy. So I know you have something you probably want to share.
Yeah, I'm going to show that here in a minute. Certainly can help with that. That's a real passion of mine. But so, like I said, so is SEL. I think they're attached. And I think if you look at this quote that I've taken some of Mina's words and tweaked them a little bit. But I just think if we prioritize SEL and media in classes, it will help our stress. It'll help with better management. It's a win for all of us. It's really taking that stuff we do in school and allowing them to be successful outside of school, rather than just, let's say, rote memorization or things like that. And I think you'll learn a lot. I think just the video of Troll, for example, has a visceral impact on all of us, whatever angle you see that at. And that's an example it's going to have on your kids. I'm not saying just that resource. There's a lot of them out there. I saw most of you did put that in the chat, and I hope you do think it's worth it. Sometimes we think we have all this curriculum we have to cover, and it's just one more thing. And what I was trying to encourage you is embedding it into what you're already doing, trying to push for showing the human elements of characters in history, or how does the physics of what you push yourself do to your brain, and just all, you would go through all kinds of different components to this, characters in English on down the line. As Nancy sort of alluded to, one of the passions that I have had and been a part of for a long time is around media literacy. I have a co-author in this particular book named Jennifer Lagarde. Many of you may know of her. She was in North Carolina for a really long time. Her and I both have a real passion for media literacy. And so we have written a book. We did it because we think it's an important subject. We're certainly not doing it to get rich by any means. And we have been really excited to see just the explosion of folks that are using it. And inside, not only do we kind of paint the evolution of media literacy when it comes to students in school, but we also do a lot of resources in there of how you can better embed it. And I will give you a hint. We are actually working on book number 2, because this was such a hit that we wanted to build kind of I'll call it a lesson plan book, or a book that gives you a bunch of strategies of things that you can use right away in the classroom. So I'm really excited about that. I'm actually working on that during this pandemic. So it always feels weird to push your book out there, but we are very proud of it. And since some of you are asking for it, I'm really
Yes,
hoping
and
that,
Darren, it looks like you have several people who maybe have the book or have seen you present at NC Ties with Jennifer. So
awesome, wonderful.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. We're coming down to the end here. We've got about 3 minutes. This is how you can get a hold of me. Would love to chat with you and help if I can. It will be part of this presentation, but I want to certainly get to what I think Nancy needs to do, which is the business part of this. But I will hang out here for the next 10 minutes or so. And if you have any questions in chat, I'd be happy to answer. I just appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Darren. We so appreciate your expertise, and your passion is very evident. and some great ideas and resources and just things to think about. So thank you, Darren. I have put the link in the chat to today's survey. When you fill out that survey, Jonathan will send you a link, or I'm sorry, a certificate within a couple of days. Those of you who have participated in these know he's usually pretty quick about it, but give him a couple days and he will send you that that certificate. I've also put a link to the resources from today that Darren has mentioned, and so those are there. Also, if you want to save the chat, there are 3 little dots on the right-hand corner of the bottom of the chat, and you can click on Save the Chat. It'll save it to your downloads folder, and then you have all of these great ideas, because a lot of we've shared resources, but also you all have shared ideas and things that you're doing in the chat, and so it might be great to have that. I think with that we will hang out, and if you have questions or need help, let us know. You can come off mute or ask us in the chat, but Darren and I will hang out. And Darren, if you want to put your contact information back up there,
Sure.
if you want to contact Darren or have questions.
Or have me come visit when we get out of this pandemic. I would love to do that too.
Yes, I know. Darren, we'd love to have you back in North Carolina. Beth is asking, she said the survey didn't ask for an email address. Beth, it should ask you, it asks you for your first and last name, and then the next question should be your email. And there is a certificate. Jonathan sends you the certificate once you fill out that survey. So basically you fill out the survey and he will send you a certificate. It takes, give him about a day or so to send that to you. And if you filled out the certificate and it, or you filled out the survey and it didn't ask for your email, if you just want to fill it out one more time there and give us your email. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, stay well. This has been the last webinar that the Friday Institute is doing right now during this remote learning series. So we're so appreciative to DPI for partnering with us and for having great friends like Darren who can help us out with these sessions and bring some new information.
Wow, I didn't know I get to